Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard, episode number 24. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an Am Law 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back. I am your host, Heather Hubbard. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have a new podcasting desk and setup, and I am super excited about it. You may not be able to hear the difference on your end, but I'm hopeful that it's going to spark new creativity and really make me efficient and productive at this. So I'm kind of excited with my new desk. Before we get started in today's topic, which is how to become an expert, I wanted to give you a heads up that the American Bar Association Journal, they do every year a top 100 blogs list. And this year they are opening it up to podcasts. So if you've been listening to the podcast, if you enjoy it, if you would like to see it on the list of top 100 blogs and podcasts to pay attention to listen to as a lawyer, I would love it for you to go on over and nominate the Hustle and Flow podcast. So you can find that on the ABA website, or for a shortcut, you can just go to hustleandflowpodcast.com/nominate. Okay, let's jump into how to become an expert. And really, you have to start with the question, well, why do you want to become an expert? And it matters because if you are a junior associate, or maybe even you've been practicing for a while, but you're getting into a brand new area of law, wanting to become an expert from a substantive perspective is a little bit different than wanting to become an expert from a marketing perspective. Now, hopefully, if you're marketing an expertise, you actually can back up that claim. But your approach is going to be totally different in the way you go about it. And if you're wanting to get substantive knowledge in an area, it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to be a professor or an academic or the go-to expert in that area of law. So that's why it's important, just from an initial standpoint, to ask yourself, why do you want to be an expert? Now, there are many reasons why you would want to do this. In episode number 7, The Riches and the Niche, we talked about why you might want to have some kind of expertise. So if you missed that episode, go back and listen to it. And I kind of talk about why you would even want to consider being an expert. It really does help you raise your rates, raise your credibility, and give you a better marketing platform. Okay, so you've decided that you want to become an expert in an area. And let's say that you want to be an expert from a substantive perspective first and foremost. You may not know the law at all. Maybe it's an emerging area of law, or maybe it's well established, but you're not familiar with it. If you're an associate, maybe you're in a different practice group, or maybe you're in the practice group but haven't experienced a certain type of law that you're interested in. Similarly, even if you're a solo or you're in a small town, if there is a type of expertise that you want to be known for because you really enjoy that work or it pays better, and you want to attract, more than your fair share from your community and maybe some surrounding counties, that would be another example. And this even applies in-house. If you are in a department and you're interested in another area of law or another department, all of this kind of comes together in this same umbrella of wanting to become an expert in an area of law that you're just not right now. So how do you go about doing that? Well, there's a few different ways, and they're really quite obvious, but sometimes we go about them the wrong way. So a lot of times we think, okay, I want to go directly to a treatise, or some people even think maybe I should go get an LLM, or audit some type of law school class or take some kind of online course from a university or a law school in this area of law. Now, I want you to think back to when you were in law school. Did you really learn that much about the practical part of law? Not really. I mean, it's really more about theoretical training and how you think about things. If you found that law school was actually very informative and taught you how to practice law, then maybe, go back to your law school and see if you can't audit. Otherwise, skip that. It's not going to be helpful. It's going to be boring, and it's going to be more of an exercise of your mind as opposed to knowing how to actually practice it. Same with a treatise. It's really hard to read a treatise from front to back. It really should be more of a resource when you're trying to figure out something in particular. So the best way to become an expert in a new area is to actually just throw yourself out there. I don't know about you, but that's how I got my most valuable lessons and, learned the most was when I was a young associate and was put into situations that I was not ready for. I mean, I wasn't prepared, right? But you just jump in the deep end and you figure out how to swim, right? And you're going to make a few mistakes along the way, but there is no better way than to just learn. So what does that look like? Well, if you're an associate, you just want to raise your hand. You want to go to partners that are practicing the area of law that you're interested in, and you tell them that, even if they're in a different office. And you don't just say it once. You repeat it over and over and over again. If you see a new case come in, you can ask, can I be on this? And you might even say, I'm willing to, as I'm learning this, if you're concerned that I'm not up to speed, I will work with another associate as opposed to always coming to you, partner, to learn these things. Or 2, I'm willing to do part of it non-billable on my own time, right? So these are ways that you get in front of a partner to say, I'm really interested in doing this. Let's say you are a partner or you are in-house or you have your own firm. Well, how are you going to learn that if there's not someone above you that's already doing it? The first is to dive deep into programs that actually can provide you some substance. I personally like PLI. This is not an endorsement, but I think that the Practicing Law Institute, I think that many of the CLEs that they put together, you kind of have to figure out which ones you want. They will have practitioners come in and really talk about the nuts and bolts of how you're going to approach a certain thing. And you're not going to be able to take one. You may have to take, maybe you commit to doing one every other week or once a month, and it can get expensive. If it's a way for you to get that expertise, then you're just investing in yourself and your education. So find a substantive teaching CLE or workshop, not one where people are just talking about trends or what's going on with this case or that case. That's not going to help you become an expert in your field. You have to start with the basics and the foundations. If you don't know how something actually works in practice, you're not really going to be able to soak in the nuances or the trends or what's going on. And the next is to just put yourself out there. So there are occasions when, depending on what the area of law is, you might be able to do some pro bono matters. Otherwise, you just start bringing them in. And there can be a fear, right? Because you do, under the ethical rules, have to be competent, but you do have a license. And if you are committed to making sure that you do it right, then you should be okay. So you might bring a new matter in, and what you're going to do is, if there's no other partner or no other person that can mentor you, provide you feedback, and teach you, is you actually hire another lawyer to mentor you. This is how I mentored a few different attorneys, and I really enjoyed it. And I don't think enough people actually take advantage of this opportunity. So the way that this works is you would hire another attorney that's already doing this work. And you're not having them on the matter, you're not having them on the case, and you are not charging your client for their work. You are paying them their hourly rate to look over your shoulder and teach you and mentor you and help you. Okay. So you can still have that, confidentiality. You can create that privilege, but you don't have to necessarily become co-counsel, if that makes any sense. So that is a great way to learn. I know oftentimes we try to get informal mentors, but we feel bad about calling them up and saying, hey, can you help me on this? Or what do you think about this? And honestly, it can be overwhelming. I'm someone where a lot of people call me to pick my brain on IP issues still to this day. And, I want to help people, but there comes a point where it's like, I have my own work to do. But if you offer to pay someone for that mentoring, it totally changes the dynamic, both from the mentor's perspective and from yours. You're not going to be as bashful about picking up the phone and asking questions, and you're going to ask more focused questions because you're now the client and you're trying to be more efficient and you want that to be a really productive conversation. So this is a great way to become an expert, is to simply hire someone that already is to teach you how to do it. Now, obviously, you're going to have to follow all of the ethical rules, make sure that, you're passing conflicts, that kind of thing, if you're sharing private confidential information, and you may need to disclose that to the client as well. Okay. Once you have the foundations in place, once you are starting to really feel like you've got an understanding of the law, then you probably do want to figure out those nuances. Now, that said, if you're not super into reading every case and knowing every nuance, that's perfectly okay. You can be an expert without having to be the academic, the person that can quote every case, because you can look that up, right? Like if you have a case and it becomes an issue, you can research it. Now, some people just love reading cases and knowing that stuff, right? They're total brainiacs. That's not me. But that's okay, right? You do you. If you're a brainiac, then by all means, read every single case, know what's going on. If you're not, that's not a good use of your time because you're not going to enjoy it and you're probably not even going to fully let it sink in because you're not in it. At this point, you're really just trying to get as much practice as possible. And that then leads to the second part, which is marketing your expertise. How do you become an expert in the eyes of others so that you will get hired to do the work? So maybe you're already an expert in a field, or you feel like you have enough credibility that you can actually put yourself out there. Or maybe you've now got this foundation in place because you followed through with step one and getting some substantive knowledge. How do you then market yourself? Because that is how you're going to get the most practice, is getting more work. And you get more work by being known as the expert. This is really quite simple. I won a lot of awards when I was practicing IP law, and I still get them, and I don't even really have a practice anymore. And I got them at a very young age. So, I have best lawyers in America for copyright law, trademark law, patent litigation, and intellectual property litigation. I have been named a managing IP star for many years. Super lawyers in intellectual property. And I'm not saying this to boast because my point is I actually don't think that I'm that smart when it comes to that stuff. And maybe some of that is just, me not owning my worth. But I really don't think that I am the best IP practitioner out there. What I knew how to do was position myself in a way that allowed my peers and others to see me as someone that was a rising star and that really was an expert in that field. So that's kind of what I want to break down and share with you today. How do you do that? Step number one is to not be afraid to put yourself out there. So many attorneys, especially in large law firms, are taught that if you don't have a specific expertise and you've not been practicing it for years, you better not dare say that you can practice that area of law. And that is cultural. If you go to any small town lawyer, they can and will do anything, right? Again, you've got your ethics rules, but being able to figure out the law is not the same as what we perceive in big law as what it takes to practice a certain area. Now, I do think that if you're in big law, because your rates are so high, your clients, they are going to expect you to have a specific skill set or area of expertise. But again, the way you do that is just start putting yourself out there. So as soon as I became an associate, when I was practicing IP law, obviously I only knew so much, but it didn't prevent me from writing on the topic and speaking on the topic. But you have to know your audience. So I started by writing for the Young Lawyers Division, and I would write on topics that interested me and that I thought would interest them. I did pro bono topics. So for example, we had here in Nashville a volunteer lawyer for the arts. And so I would go in and speak on some very basic topics to artists. And that allowed me to get my feet wet, and it allowed me to start being seen, at least in the IP community. So that is the first recommendation for you, is to just put yourself out there. If you don't feel like you're an expert enough to be doing, really high level panels or, really thought-provoking articles, start where you are. I guarantee you there's a local Rotary Club that would be willing to hear you speak on your topic of choice. There's probably other organizations as well. And, maybe you even have a local bar association where you could go in, whether it's young lawyers or a specific area. For example, in Nashville, we have a local IP bar, and we do these lunch and learns where someone just speaks on a topic. And yeah, you're going to get some brainiacs in there that are going to, push and challenge you and try to show that they're smarter than you, but who cares? Just go on in there and present on a topic so that you can start getting comfortable doing it and people see you. You want them to know your face and your name. And then you want to go from there. You want to build up. So after maybe a few years of speaking and writing for what felt comfortable to me, I then went for a really big fish, and I got it. So many people don't raise their hands. So this was actually really good for me. I was probably maybe a third or fourth year attorney, and I submitted to the ABA IP annual meeting. And by the way, backtrack a little bit. If there are local or national organizations in the area of expertise that you're interested, you need to be going. Not just to have that substantive knowledge, but you need to be networking, right? And expertise is based upon how other people see you in many ways. If you're an expert but no one knows and you don't get credit for it, it doesn't matter, right? Like it's sitting on a shelf collecting dust. So you need to be in those rooms with those people so that they see you and you're building your network that way. Okay, so I decided that I wanted to moderate a panel. I didn't think I was ready to actually speak at the ABA annual conference, but I was willing and ready and wanted to do a panel. I wanted to moderate a panel. So I got together some topics that I thought were super interesting. And then I proposed what that topic would look like, and I proposed who I wanted on the panel. And these were some of the biggest cases going on in the U.S. at the time. And I put down the names of the attorneys that were on those cases because it didn't ask that you'd already talked to the presenters. It just asked that you put it together. So I put it together. And so the panel looked amazing. And they reached back out and said, yeah, we'd love for you to do it. And so then I went about inviting these panelists to come and speak. And so I literally had the plaintiff's side and the defendant's side. And no one else had done this, probably because they just had not asked. And so they agreed. And, I really did my research. I really did my homework. I was over-prepared, which was required for what I was doing. And, when I then met with the attorneys before our panel, I think, when they met me in person, they were like, what? Who is this? Why is she our moderator? But this is where you just put yourself out there. Have confidence, have courage, go for it. So we get in there, and it was probably one of the largest, it was a breakout session, but there were probably 500 people in the room because everyone wanted to hear these two attorneys go at it. It was a very heated debate, and it was also on telephone, right? So it gave me an opportunity to put myself out there in a way where I'm not speaking as the expert, but I'm asking good questions. I'm putting people in the room that are experts. And I was, as a fourth-year attorney, in front of 500 people and even more on the phone and having an engaging conversation with these attorneys. And because I was able to handle the attorneys well, that actually impressed the room even more. So then when I went to the networking receptions or anything else for the rest of the conference, people were coming up to me. I mean, I got a few job offers out of this. So I think sometimes we try to, be careful. We're like, oh, I'm not quite ready for that, but just do it. And granted, I will tell you, there were seasoned attorneys who were highly annoyed that I was doing that panel, but that's their problem, not mine. And so I encourage you not to worry about what people think. Put yourself out there. Bring together the experts that you want to be one day and offer to moderate a panel. All of these large conferences are always looking for great dynamic speakers. That doesn't have to be you. Just put together what that looks like and then be the moderator instead. Okay, so once you've done that, then you actually want to be the person that is on the panel or giving a presentation that has that substantive expertise. And that just builds with time. And a lot of times the way you do that is, again, by just raising your hand. Start with your local bar association. You can get involved. You can tell, you don't have to be on a committee, right? But you can tell the leaders of the committee that you would like to help. It is always so hard to get people to help. And you would think, oh, people are dying to speak at CLEs or whatever else. Not really. If you just raise your hand and say, I would like to do this, but you need to have your topic. You need to know what's interesting and what people want to hear about and present it in a way where the committee's not having to do any work, right? Like it's just a no-brainer. So you can start there. And then whether it's the ABA or whether it is an industry-focused conference or group, then you start looking for those opportunities and you submit your proposal to speak. They're probably not going to come to you. You have to be proactive about submitting yourself to speak. And that probably means that you're going to have to pay for your flight and your hotel and to attend the conference. But either get your firm to support it or pay for it yourself. If becoming that expert is important to you, again, it's just an investment. Now, speaking is one way to do it. Another way is writing. So I already mentioned that you might want to start by writing for, it might be a Young Lawyers Division newsletter, and then maybe it's just your local bar association magazine or newsletter. Maybe it's for the Rotary or another business-focused group. There are associations for anything and everything. So let's say, for example, that your expertise is going to have some kind of relation to technology, even if it's not technology, right? If it in any way could be helpful to people in technology, like even labor and employment, like is going to be helpful in technology, you find a local technology group and you go speak to them or you write for their newsletter. It just gives you confidence and it allows you to start honing your message. Then you want to start, again, building your way up, and then you want to start pitching for the big things. So it might be the ABA Journal. It might be corporate counsel. It might be, I don't know if today's general counsel is still in existence, but you get the picture. You know the really large publications that people are following. Then you want to pitch to them. And the way that you pitch to a large publication is not to reach out and say, here's my article. That's a huge mistake. I think people do it all the time because they just don't know better. But you don't submit your full article in advance because it may not fit in with their theme. It may not be a topic they're interested in, and it may not really fit within their guidelines. So what you want to do is first and foremost, just go and see if they have information on how to publish, right? A lot of times they do. So follow that procedure. Or you want to reach out to, oftentimes not the editor, but the associate editor or a managing editor. And you want to ask, Do they have themes, right? Do they have any themes coming up? A lot of times there is a theme per publication. So you want to find out themes. And then you might say, I have 3 different topic ideas that I would be interested in proposing, and here's why I think your readers might be interested. And you would have like a title and just a sentence or 2 as to what that looks like. Because at that point, you're allowing the editor to respond to say, none of those fit, but would this work, right? And then you'll know whether or not it does. You can do it. You should do it. Or they'll respond back and say, I'm interested in this one. Can you tell me a little bit more? And they're going to have in mind where it fits within the publication. So if it's, only 500 words versus 3,000 words, it allows them to tell you what they're looking for, and then you write it for them with exactly the placement that they have in mind. That is how they prefer to do business, because they don't have time to read everyone's articles that are submitted, and the articles often don't fit with what they're looking for. You want to make their job easy. So you can have things in mind, but let them really lead it for you. And you can also do this with business journals, or even, whether it's the Huffington Post. That may not be as important for legal matters, but you can do that. Maybe it's Forbes or Bloomberg. There's a lot of different options for you, but that's how you want to approach it. You want to reach out to editors, again, not the top one, and basically ask questions, build a relationship, and propose really short snippets that they can choose from and give you feedback on, and then tell you exactly what they're looking for, words, publication dates, all of that. And so then you're helping them, and they're probably going to come back to you again, and they're going to see you as an expert. Now, if you just want to get published, it doesn't really matter. You can get published anywhere. But at some point, when you become a big enough expert, you want to be a little bit more discerning. So you want to ask questions like, what does the reprints look like? If you want to be able to provide a copy to your clients, or if you want to go give presentations and provide a copy as part of your CLE materials, you're going to want to know if you have to pay them for reprint. A lot of publications require that because they're the one that's maintaining the copyright, not you. They have you sign that over, and they want you to pay to print it. So find out what that looks like. And it is a great idea to be able to reprint. So try to negotiate that on the front end and then get it out there. So, okay, why are you doing all of this speaking and writing? Well, part of it's for the people in the audience, but the most important part, this is where marketing really comes in. Sometimes someone will read an article and call you. Sometimes someone will be in the audience when you speak and call you. But generally, the reason why you do it is because it allows you to put it on your website, right? It just builds credibility. It lets you be seen as an expert. And if you're in front of people enough, they just see you as an expert. I personally think that's how I got in the position that I did, where I won so many awards at a young age. I was everywhere. I was always putting myself out there. I was always speaking. I was always writing. And at some point, if people see you enough talking about a certain topic, they're like, she must know what she's doing, even if you don't really know what you're doing. I was a good IP attorney, but I'm just saying it's all about positioning yourself. So you want to put all of your articles and your speaking engagements on your website. So when someone is looking for an attorney in that area of law, or maybe they've already contacted you and they're trying to decide between a few different attorneys, they may not actually go and read your articles. But if you can have that on your website and you're talking about the same thing all the time, it builds instant credibility and it helps you get more of those types of matters in the door. If you're writing and speaking all the time, but on all kinds of different topics, that doesn't really help build your credibility from an expertise perspective. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but that's not a good approach for trying to become an expert. And in fact, if you say you're an expert in one thing, but you do a ton of speaking and writing in other areas, people actually aren't going to believe or trust that you are an expert in the area you claim to be. So make sure that you are taking advantage of putting it on your website. That will also help with a little bit of SEO and when people are searching for an attorney as well. And then take it one step further. Let people know. If you are in a large firm, you want to go to your practice group meeting and let them know that you were published or let them know that you were speaking. And maybe for practice groups where you can have cross referrals, you offer to go in and do like a mini speech on it or a mini takeaway from your article. So you want to leverage what you did to market it even more. Same with clients. It is a great way to reach out. One, I used to take potential clients with me to speak. So if I was putting together a panel, I would take them with me, which would allow them, one, to get their own space to be an expert, but two, if we're traveling together, you get some really good one-on-one time. You can also send it out, right? Like you can send out the article and say, and don't just do a big e-blast, send it out to each one that you think can actually benefit and say, I wrote this article, but here are the 3 takeaways that I think are actually most important to your business or that you would be interested in. Make it very personal to them. So once you start doing that, it just builds up your credibility and you are seen as an expert. So that's really how you are marketing. Writing and speaking does not give you substantive knowledge. It is all about marketing. It is all about positioning. But the more people see you as an expert, the more work in that area you get, and then the more substantive expertise you get, and it all works together. So there you have it, how to become an expert, both from a substantive perspective and from an outward-facing marketing perspective. Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to connecting with you next week. Are you feeling stuck or frustrated in your career? Are you exhausted from trying to balance so many competing demands? Do you have big dreams and goals, but no time to focus on them? Then join me in a small group of female attorneys for the Life and Law in Balance retreats at Miraval. They're coming up in September. To learn more and register, go to lifeandlawinbalance.com. I'd love to meet you there.